What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Zac Show. Does anybody else use jars for cups in their house? Because I do.
My name is Zac, and this is my show. You know what else? I'm at my home. In my basement, you know it, recording on the phone, and I think it's just about the time for us to dive right in. Let's go. Welcome to the Zac Show. Wow.
Hey, welcome to the Zac Show. It's been a few weeks since I've posted, so a little life update. We had our second child. Boom, it went down. So I intentionally took a few weeks off of not doing this just to kind of get our legs under us, you know, with a little newborn crying and feeding all the time. And then a few weeks for me to just figure out when I can even record a podcast and just trying to pull it all together. You know what I'm saying? So, and I've done a lot beforehand to try and simplify the process a little bit here and there. So what we're covering today is Sermon on the Mount Part 2, and that would be verses 13 through 16 of Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. A little sleep deprived here. But yeah, we're going to dive into this thing, and hopefully it'll work, and I won't have to pause or come back to it. Typically, I don't like to edit. I like to do a one-shot type of deal. I forgot to pull up the verse ahead of time, so this is part of the we're not gonna edit it. So verses, what did I say? 16 verses 13 16. Here we go. In your Bible, if you're reading it, it's probably labeled as Salt and Light. So verses 13 through 16, that's all we're covering today. Those three verses, we're going to dive into it. It's going to be fantastic, and hopefully I don't get interrupted anywhere between. But if I do. We'll do a little genie edit, as I like to call it. Anyway, salt and light is what we're diving into. So let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and read the scripture, and we'll get into it, and maybe I'll take a sip out of my jar full of water. So here we go. This is what it says. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So this section, what I'm pulling from it is two portions, two big things. They obviously work together. This whole thing is one long sermon, so these two sections are going to work together, just like this entire series on the Sermon on the Mount is going to work together. But number one, the first section, we are called to be the salt of the earth, basically meaning we, as Christ followers, as Christians, we are called to be preservatives. Right? So in that time period, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, they would use salt as a preservative to preserve the meat longer. Now we have refrigerators. So if Jesus gave this sermon today, he may say we're called to be refrigerators, but we're called to preserve things, specifically preserving what is good, what is pure, the commandments, right? Loving one another, to preserve these things. But people are by default people pleasers. We just are. And you can talk a big game all you want. You know, you hear those people all the time that say, they're like, man, I don't care what people think. I'm going to say whatever I want to say. Look, that may be true on social media. And I always say I need to do a whole sermon on why social media is not good. But people will be pretty bold on social media. But when it comes down to it, when you're confronted with a statement, question, or a situation, whatever it is, that you know is going to make someone feel uncomfortable, you're going to get a pit in your stomach. I know I do. I don't like walking into difficult situations. I don't know anybody who likes walking into difficult situations, but it's just the way it is. And there are certain things that, you know, I believe from reading the Bible and doing research and working this career, living this life following Jesus, that I know will make people super upset. And some things that I believe in that I view as hard truths for people to hear, things that go against the norms of society. So when it comes to being a person that preserves the faith, it becomes very hard when you know you're going to make them upset. Now, I will put a little disclaimer here. In the United States, for the most part, it's pretty easy to be Christian. Like, if you want to follow Christ, you can do it and not have any fear of anybody taking your life. That's not the case for every single place in the world. But the reality is there are things in the Bible that people absolutely hate. There are things that they disagree with. And for whatever reason in our society, we kind of get a mindset now that's like, if you hate somebody or if you disagree with somebody, then you hate them. Like there's no willingness to work together. It makes zero sense to me at all. But you know, there's people out there that talk a big game, but usually from what I've seen, what I've experienced myself is when you're put in a situation where you know what you're going to say is going to make someone uncomfortable, a lot of people will just try to avoid that situation altogether. Or they will kind of change their tune a little bit when they actually look somebody in the eye and not just comment on social media. Very few people will still tell it like it is. And then even then, very few people can do it in a loving way, which kind of brings me to my next point. When you're put in those situations, always respond with love. So you may say your hot topic point that you believe in, that you agree with, and someone does not agree with you or whatever. Respond with love. The Bible tells us to love our neighbor, not to hate them. It doesn't say that anywhere in there. When we love people, we are being preservatives. I think society, though, gets the love wrong sometimes, right? So I've started noticing the word right is like my filler word. I need to get rid of that. I'm saying right like I'm talking to somebody else in the room and I want you to agree with me. And I guess I do want you to agree with me, but maybe you don't. But if love is the preservative really that we use in our society, I think sometimes we think that love is simply just agreeing with whatever makes that person happy. And that's not the case. You know, I love my kids, and because I love them, I'm not going to let them eat cookies or ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I mean, my daughter tonight, she kind of snuck a cookie. It was loosely innocent. I wanted her, I got to be the coolest parent on the face of the planet. I wanted her to eat a slice of pizza before she ate a cookie. A slice of pizza. All right. Home girl, all she wants to do is eat yogurt all day. But she ended up with a cookie anyway. She took a very small bite of a piece of pizza, ended up with a cookie anyway, and later told me that her tummy hurt. You know, and it hurt. I believe her that it hurt. Like, she had tears coming down her face and everything, and it's a sign of like, nah, I'm not trying to be a mean dad and tell you that you can't have sweets. I'm telling you that you can't have sweets because I know what the end result's going to be when you have absolutely nothing in your stomach. You know, so a lot of times I think that's the same case in our society today, that if you love someone, you have to agree with them. You have to just support what they're doing, even if you don't think it's right. And I don't think that's true at all. You know, I don't think when you love someone that you have to support every little thing that it is that they're doing. I think that tough love is still love. There is a tough love aspect to all of this. I love my daughter, so therefore I'm willing to be the bad guy and tell her that she can't have these sweets before she eats real food because it's going to make her stomach hurt, right? I'm willing to let her get mad at me in that moment. Now, that's a silly example for a bigger topic, but it's because I love her. Like, I don't care. I don't want her to have a temper tantrum. I would rather eat 47 cookies right alongside of her, right? But I know that it's just not going to be good. Trust me, it would be so much easier just let the girl have sweets. And it wouldn't actually be easier because then I'd be dealing with a sick kid at night. But I just think that you can love someone and not support everything that they're doing. If what I think you're doing is unhealthy, why would I support that? Like, it just doesn't make sense to do it, right? And so love is the preservative, but it doesn't mean that you have to become a doormat either, right? It's meaning that you just want to preserve the things that you think are good and are healthy. And I think following a relationship with Jesus is ultimately a healthy thing to do. Like, I think it leads to freedom. And when you actually listen to what the Bible is telling you that ultimately leads to a healthier lifestyle as a whole. I've gotten wildly off track from my notes. But when you're loving someone, and even though they're doing something you disagree with, I don't think that means that you exclude them. And this is where I'm trying to get back on track with my notes, right? It doesn't mean that you go in and you judge them. It doesn't mean that every time you walk in the room that you just shake your head out. I'm like, that Mr. Man over there is doing all the naughty things. Shame on him. Can you believe he even showed his face in here? No, you go up to him, you shake their hands, you have a conversation with them, an enjoyable conversation too, right? It simply means like, I can't support this thing that you're doing because I think it's wrong. And if you want to get help getting out of that addiction or what have you, whatever the case is, I'm here with open arms. You know, I've had conversations with people. There's one guy in particular. I'm going to take a sip out of my water jar here. It's really the perfect cup, if you think about it. But I had a conversation with one guy, and you know, I went on a trip with him, and it was a big group of people. And he was just, man, he's cussing up a storm. And that's maybe a sermon for another day. He was cussing up a storm. And at another point, he was like, professing Jesus left and right and talking about the Bible and all of that. And I remember, you know, I don't agree with cussing. Like I said, that's maybe a different topic for a different day. I actually may hit it in my young adult ministry Monday. Actually, I think we're gonna touch on it a little bit. Why I think it's not good to do, especially if you're a Christ follower. Anyway, so maybe listen in next week on my YouTube channel where I post those things up as well. But anyway, he was cussing up a storm, but then he was also like professing Jesus and saying how much he loves God and all this stuff. And so I just kind of had a unique opportunity where it was just me and him. We were at a hotel, and we just happened to be walking from the Continental Breakfast. The trip we were taking, we stopped halfway at a little janky hotel on the side of the road. So we were walking from the Continental Breakfast back to the room, and I just told him, I said, hey man, like, I hear you say that you love Jesus, but I see this thing that's not so good. You know, like all the cussing stuff. And I went about it from a standpoint of, I'm just looking for what's your mindset on all this. You know, I wasn't going in from a standpoint of judgment. At least I was trying not to. I was going in from a standpoint of like, do you think that this is right? Like, what's going on with that? Because to me, it doesn't seem right. And he literally just told me, he said, man, I hate that I do it, but it's this nasty habit that I can't. He's like, I can't kick it, you know? And I just asked him, like, do you want help? And he said, yeah, I would love some help. And I think that's the approach that we should take. Like, we don't want to, when we're trying to act as a preservative, we don't want to shame people. We don't want to beat around the bush either. We don't want to shame them, but we can't sit there and say what they're doing is right. And there's just a loving way to do that. And I think a big loving way to do it is to offer your help. Like, you know, if somebody were to say like, man, I hate that I do this. I hate that I did this. I hate that action that I did. It's very loving for us to come in and be like, okay, do you want some help with that? I can help you. That's going to speak volumes. And so to me, that's what it looks like to be the salt of the earth. So like, yeah, you're upholding these things. And the people who are professing Jesus, we're holding accountable to that, but we're doing it in a loving way. We're doing it in a way of, man, let me come alongside you and help you, not just simply look at you and tell you need to get better. And then the second part of this, and it kind of ties in with the first, is it talks about being the city on a hill, right? A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. And this one, it can be tough because you may not have asked for this part. You may not have asked to be a role model, but you are one. And so when you're becoming a Christian, you're a Christ follower, and you publicly declare that, people are going to look at you now. You know, I'm used to it from the standpoint of a pastor. They're like, man, I understand it. Even my driving habits will be criticized, right? Because I'm a pastor. It's just the name of the game. It's what it is. But you don't always ask for it. I mean, literally, you can be a role model simply because you're an older sibling. You can be a role model because you're in high school and middle schoolers just look up to you. You can be a role model because you're in college and high schoolers look up to you. It's not ever really asked for. Sometimes you just are. And I think majority of people out there, like probably 99.99% of people in the world, are a role model to someone in some way, shape, or form. You just are. If you have kids, you better believe that you are. If you're an older sibling, you better believe that you are a role model in that person's life. So if we act like salt, preserving what is pure and good and holy, people will see that and desire it. I think back on, Daniel, the whole Daniel fast thing. And I apologize. Some of these things I think of just off the top of my head. So that's why I don't have like the scripture pulled up and ready to go. But the whole Daniel fast thing, and forgive me, this is the Zac version, but basically the king's guards are like, you're going to eat X, Y, and Z, and Daniel comes in and he says like, hey, let us eat something different. And that's the whole Daniel fast thing. And basically what happens is they end up being healthier than what they would have eaten. This is a really terrible version of that story, but he was a preservative and he lived in discipline in that moment and ultimately became healthier for it, and then people desired that. So I think things like when people see joy in our lives, when the whole world could feel like it's crashing down around us, or people think that we should feel like the whole world is crashing down around us, and yet we have peace and we have joy, people are going to start asking questions. People are going to want to know what we are all about. Man, I'm scrolling through my notes right now and I totally forgot. Totally forgot where I was. My next point in all of this stuff is hate will never draw people close to you. A wild segue, but look, we're called to be a city on a hill. You're going to be a role model, whether you like it or not. And when you love people, it's going to draw people close to you. And when you hate people, it's just not. It's going to push them away. People don't want to be around somebody who's filled with hate all the time. It really doesn't matter how deep the relation goes with someone. If you do not respect someone and you're constantly putting them down, they will eventually leave. I'm not even talking about romantic relationships, just friendships as a whole. I have seen it happen time and time again. Just being someone who's in ministry and working with adolescents and young adults and all that stuff, man, I've seen people expect to have friendships, but yet treat those friendships so poorly. Even when it comes to gossip, you may not be talking poorly about anyone at the table, but negative talk is just negative talk, and people do not want to be around it. And they are probably thinking, at least I would be thinking this, how long until you talk about me that way when I'm not present? Guarantee you, if you're gossiping about someone, that is probably running through somebody else's brain. I think ultimately what's going to draw people closer to you and ultimately closer to Jesus is the fruits of the Spirit. And just to recap those things, they're very simple. You can find it. This scripture I did write down this time. It's Galatians chapter 5, verses 22 through 23. And it says this: but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. Those characteristics are going to draw people close to you and ultimately draw people close to God. And I also wanted to take a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It's known as the love chapter, right? But we're going to dive into it. It used to be, at least. I do a lot of like wedding DJing. I've officiated a few weddings. I haven't seen anybody just simply read this verse in a long time, but let me read it for you. It's known as a love verse. It at least used to be read in weddings all the time. But 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it's the whole chapter. Here's what it says. It says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. This is the stuff people want to be around. They don't want to be around judgy people. They don't want to be around hateful people. They don't want to be around people who are going to put them down constantly. They want to be around love. They want to be around someone who's going to cheer for them. You want to be a city on a hill? Love people unconditionally. Love the people that everybody else hates. That'll make you a city on a hill. That's going to draw people to you. So, with all of this, man, I would encourage you, go on out there today and love somebody. Just be kind. Put yourself aside a little bit from time to time. I feel like so many times in our life, we just want to be right. And we will do whatever it takes to be right. We'll shout, we'll scream, we want to win the argument, we want to be the conqueror. But I think what's going to speak loud to people is the idea that you are the one that they can go to with literally anything. I had a situation with my volunteers. It really wasn't a big situation, but a political event happened, and I know he thinks differently than probably a majority of the people that I work with. And so I pulled him into a room, and I could tell like he was just kind of angry at all the stuff, right? and a lot of people were angry about whatever the situation was. And so I pulled him into a room and I said, look, I want you to say whatever it is you want to say right now, and I will hold nothing against you. I just sat him in there. I'm like, you can cuss me out. You can use all the language that you want to use. I want you to know that you have someone that you can vent to right now who's going to be a safe person, who's going to listen to you. And he didn't cuss me out. He didn't go crazy or anything like that, but we had a really good conversation. And I think he got a lot of stuff off his chest that day. Like, I think that's what it looks like to be a city on a hill. And ultimately, if you're in a position of leadership, I think you're in a position of servanthood. And if you're serving somebody, you're loving them. You know, you're doing things for them, not because it's going to benefit you, but because it's going to benefit them. So how do we be preservatives? We love people. And what do we do when we're a city on a hill? We love people. Like, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be a perfect human being. None of us are perfect. But if you always kind of go back to the love aspect of it, I think it's going to be good. You know, I'm not always trying to be right in my life. I'm just trying to do what is right. And sometimes, for me, doing what is right means I admit that I'm wrong. That's just life. You're not always going to be right. Sometimes you're going to be wrong. So how do you be a preservative when, you know, you're wrong or you messed up? How do you be a city on a hill when you messed up? And I think it's simple. I think you admit your mistakes, you seek forgiveness, and you actually show correction. You actually correct yourself, you know? So anyway, thanks for joining the Zac Show. That was probably a little bit of a scrambled hot mess. I have to feed a 1 month old soon. So, oh man, I think like ground rules of podcasting is you don't tell people when you feel like you had a bad podcast. I don't think it was too bad of a podcast, but my thoughts were a little scrambled. I apologize for that. So anyway, just know we're figuring out this new world over here in the Zac household. But look, thanks for joining. I've started kind of going live on TikTok every once in a while. If you want to join and hang out, it's going to be sporadic and spotty. So, but it's been good, man. I've had some good conversations with people about the gospel and everything on there. So I think it's worth doing again. I shoot for Sundays. Sometimes it doesn't happen. This is probably like the worst plug for a podcast I've ever done in my life. But, anywho, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you got a jar of water just like me. We'll see you guys next time. Hopefully that next time is next week. But we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.
My name is Zac, and this is my show. You know what else? I'm at my home. Yeah, my basement, you know it, recording on the phone, and I think it's just about the time for us to dive right in. Let's go. Welcome to the Zac Show. Wow.